Hey everyone, this is Reviews of Ryan. I haven't reviewed any movies in about 3 weeks, and today I'm going to be doing a review roundup of all the movies that I've watched recently. I'm actually going to do these roundups. I'm going to do 3 videos because I've watched a decent amount and I don't want to put too much in one video. So I will be doing 3 videos of everything that I've watched. In this first video, I will be reviewing 5 different movies that I've checked out recently. Before I get into this video, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, give the video a like, and comment below, have you seen any of these films? Let's not waste any time. Let's get into all the movies that I've watched. So the first movie that I checked out this month is It's a Wonderful Knife. I checked this out on November the 9th. This was the first movie that I saw in theaters after about a month absence of going to the theaters because there just wasn't a lot to actually watch. Now this movie is a horror film and it will be premiering on Shudder on December the 1st. It was directed by Tyler McIntyre. He's done one other film, or actually 2 films that I've seen. He's done Tragedy Girls, and he's also done a segment from VHS 99 called The Gawkers. Now this stars Justin Long. He is the mayor and he wants to take over the town, take over all the businesses. And then you have this girl named Winnie, and she has some problems with her family. Her brother, he gets a little bit more than she does. Like for Christmas, he gets a new truck and she gets a tracksuit. And then also her best friend is cheating on her with her boyfriend, and she's having a lot of troubles, and she actually is trying to stop this killer who's doing all these killings around town, and she actually does so, but she also wants to wish that she's never been born. And when she does this, she goes back into a dimension where the killer is still on the loose, and that's your main part of this story. Now, I thought this movie, it was okay. I think the makeup was all right. I do like the whole Christmas setting with the trees and the snow. I love that. Florida doesn't get that at all, so it's cool to see that in a movie, and long for the fact that maybe one day Florida will get snow, or maybe I'll see snow again at some point in my lifetime. But this whole festive thing I really did like. I think Winnie the character, she is probably the best character as far as main character wise that you're going to try to root for in here. I've never seen her in anything else. All the other characters in here, they're pretty one-dimensional. She does have help from another character of trying to stop this killer in this other universe where she technically doesn't exist to anybody else. I do think at parts the whole look of the killer, he really looks like Moon Knight with the whole white cloak and all that, the whole mask and everything. It definitely reminded me of Moon Knight. So I don't think that he's really that creative. Most of his kills involving a knife, of course. There is some callbacks in here to Scream. They have one character that has the last name of Prescott. So they do have some little callbacks to slasher films and such like that in here. I think there is some parts in here where it is a fun film, but I also think that towards the third act of this film, it goes into this supernatural element. And if you watch Justin Long in any other movies, you know his fate in this, because if you're a horror fan, you know what's going to happen with him. And I thought also too with Justin Long in this film and him wanting to take over the town, that's great and all, but once you take over that town, how is the town going to thrive? And there's some other things in there that I don't want to actually spoil. I would say watch this film one time. I think it's an okay film at best. I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. Next movie that I watched was actually at home. It is called Daddy-Daughter Trip. This was on November the 17th. And I saw that this movie was actually coming out on DVD on December 5th. And I was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and pay a few dollars, check it out, and see what I think. It stars Rob Schneider. He also directed the film as well. And also Jackie Sandler. Jackie Sandler is Adam Sandler's wife. Really, with Rob Schneider and his comedy these days, I would say that I really don't think that he's all that great these days. I think at this point he's kind of out of the game as far as really raunchy comedies at this point. And I will say before you check out this comedy film that I do not think this film is worth it by any means to watch. First off, you have Rob Schneider's character. His name is Larry Buble. And Michael Bublé will be actually making a feature in this movie. So The fact that they have that as his last name is interesting, so he must have some special connection with Michael Bublé that he's in this movie. But anyways, he is a Uber driver. He has no money. He is a very terrible inventor. He tries to make this invention where you have this hula hoop and there's like a shower curtain, and when you have to actually take a crap, you actually use this while you're outside to go to the bathroom, and it's called a hula poop. And that's the kind of jokes that are in here. There's one joke in here where he's actually sleeping next to this woman and she starts farting, and it's like a 3-minute scene where they just have this woman farting up a storm, and it's supposed to be funny. There's another scene where his daughter is at the school, and the whole premise of this movie is his daughter wants to go on a spring break vacation because all the other kids at her school are actually going on to cool places, and she wants to do that as well. And so there's a scene where he is at the school and he calls all the children poop faces. So those are the kinds of jokes that are in here. It's a PG film. It's not laughable at all. It's actually very cringe. And because Rob Schneider's character in here is very unlikable because he's very cheap, he doesn't do things for his daughter. And honestly, the way that his hair is in this, it looks absolutely ridiculous. And I just don't believe the fact that he would be married to this woman, and the fact that he's so cheap. I don't really see them actually being together. So I can't visualize that. So taking that out of the equation, so he goes on this spring break excursion with his daughter, and he promises certain things that he's going to do. There's one part where he says, we're going to go to a water park, and they go to a car wash instead. There's another part where they're going to watch a movie outside, and they're behind a fence and they're watching a movie. They go to a hotel, and he says like, hey, we're going to stay at this hotel, and they end up getting kicked out of this hotel. They bump into these vloggers, and then this is where he starts feeding off these famous vloggers to actually go on this excursion with his daughter. Now, obviously, he loves his daughter and he wants to do certain things for her, but as somebody who's a father myself, and the way that this guy acts, I mean, he is just so cheap. I mean, he's like Mr. Krabs, and it's very hard to really care about his character. Now, his daughter's really cute in here, and she has like drawing talent, and that is a factor in this movie, which is cool, I would say. But I mean, this movie is very hard to get through. I honestly could not stand it. It's very hard to get through, and by the time the film actually ended, you know, for the little girl's sake, I think that she accomplished a little bit. But for this whole father, I really don't think he really changed for the most part. And honestly, I just think he's going to keep doing what he's doing and just lying to his daughter and just not being the best of father that he could be. So I would give this a 0.5 star out of 5. It's one of the worst movies that I've seen all year long. The third movie that I watched was on November 18th, and this film is a drama comedy romance film called She Came to Me. This film stars Peter Dinklage, Anne Hathaway, and Marissa Tomei. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And this film, it is based on a composer who has writer's block, and after having a one-night stand, he starts to rediscover his passion. Now, this guy, Peter Dinklage, his character in here, he is married to Anne Hathaway, and he met Anne Hathaway after suffering through all this depression, and she was his therapist for the longest time, and they ended up getting married. But you do see throughout this film that they really don't have really much of a love connection. And Anne Hathaway, she also has a son as well. And those stories, which there are some mix of stories in here. So you have the one story with Peter Dinklage going through his depression, going through his writer's blog, and he goes on this one-night stand. And then when he actually goes on this one-night stand, he actually makes a play, and he pretty much like rekindles his whole future as a composer and writer. Then you have Anne Hathaway in this film, who is a therapist, who is always just like there for his beck and call, and just kind of always being that calm, sophisticated kind of woman, the older kind of woman that just sits there and just kind of takes everything and really just doesn't really stand up for herself. And she also wants to be a nun, which is a weird kind of thing that they threw in here. And then her son, who is older and he is 18, he is falling in love with a girl who is 16, and she is an illegal immigrant. So you have that side story, and then the father and a few of the other people want to get him for trying to have sex with the daughter. So you have those three stories in this film. Now, I will say that because there is so much going on in this film, it's a lot to really kind of mesh together within the runtime. I don't think it's a boring movie by any means, but I just think that all three stories don't exactly work to a T. And I think right away with Peter Dinklage's character and the fact that he's married to Anne Hathaway, it's very hard to just understand that relationship really at all because, like I said, they have no chemistry, they're not in love, and you just really can't picture them really being together at all. But I guess because, they worked together for so long and they were involved for so long, that's why they were in love. So that portion of the story, I was just kind of like, yeah, there was no really love or romance there. And then he has this romance with Marissa Tomei in a boat after having drinks and getting drunk, which, that scene, it's kind of interesting because she's trying to be this dominant woman, and it's kind of an awkward little sex scene that they have. It's definitely off-centered, I would say. And just that whole kind of concept that really gets him back into this whole writer's block that he has, and just, being successful and what he actually turns that love affair into. That portion is very interesting. The whole side story with the son and just, him being together with that girl, I don't know why we needed that. I mean, it just seemed like it was kind of thrown in there. And then, of course, with Anne Hathaway's character trying to be a nun. I mean, I don't know what we're doing there. It's just, I guess, like certain dreams of certain people, what they're trying to do, I guess. Like, I guess that's where her story comes in, but I definitely don't understand why the whole son story is in there, because it really doesn't follow, I think, what the film is trying to portray in a message. So I just thought that this film was just kind of meh, and I would only give it a 2 out of 5. Fourth movie that I watched on November 27th was the comedy family film Good Burger 2. Now, I love the first Good Burger. I had the first one on Steelbook. I used to watch all that all the time. Kenan and Kel is probably one of my all-time favorite shows. It's definitely up there. I love them two together. I think they are great. Now, going into this film, I was very, very into like low expectations going into this film, because honestly it's just been so long. That first film, it really followed just like a little skit from all that, and so that's really why that film actually worked. So obviously you have Kenan Thompson, Kel Mitchell returning here. You do have Carmen Electra, who does make an appearance. She is a nanny for Kel Mitchell's kids. He is married now. And the comedy in this film, it's very much similar to the first film. But the problem is, I just think this kind of comedy for nowadays, and the fact that all that isn't there anymore, and we really don't see these characters anymore, I just don't think that the comedy works as good here as it did back in the first film. Now, Kel here, he has all these kids. Their names are just from all these condiments. So you have that little aspect. Carmen Electra is the nanny. And you have Dex, who is trying to be an entrepreneur and an inventor, and he actually fails on an invention, and he actually gets fired. Kel is still working at Good Burger. Kenan Thompson's character, he actually goes back to Good Burger, gets a job, and when he gets there, he sees that this big company wants to take over Good Burger and actually buy them out and give them money to take this over. Now, they actually agree to this eventually, and when they sell off the restaurant, they want to close Good Burger for good, and they want to take over and do like a whole like new restaurant where it's like virtual and like a robot, and they actually have a robot Ed that they copied to, just make a restaurant all over the world of Good Burger. Now, this company that's doing this is a woman where she is the sister of the evil guy that was in the first film. So that, I think his name, I can't remember his name right now, but she is a sister and she's trying to take over, and that's really the basic plot of this film. Now, the jokes in here, you pretty much can just kind of go off the first film. There is one point in this film where they have a running joke where like the freezer's broken, and they put the actual handle back on the freezer, and somebody's been frozen in there apparently for over 20 years and he's still alive. So you have like really stupid stuff like that. other kind of gags that they throw in here. And honestly, I just don't think overall like the plot was fine here, I would say, but I just don't think like the comedy really landed. I think I maybe chuckled a few times. I still love Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell on here. Now his kids, Kel Mitchell's kids here, they all act like him, and they mimic him and stuff like that, and it kind of got under my nerves after a while because it just was kind of like a running joke throughout most of the film. Getting this back together now is just a little bit too little too late, and because the show isn't popular anymore, and I just don't think either one of them are as popular as they used to be, I just don't think this kind of comedy works. So I'm going to give a score of this film a 1 out of 5 because it's just not something that I can watch again. I mean, maybe you want to watch it once just to see, like, or really gather that kind of magic that you have between both of them. But I just think with the first film, and I think also, too, with the crew of Good Burger, I'm so used to that old crew, and just they all worked really well together. And because they were on All That all the time, I think that it really worked. Now, Lori Beth is in this film as a customer, which that was really cool. I really did like seeing that. But, just little other things too, like Pete Davidson. Why did he have to have a cameo in here? I do not like that guy. And then also you have Rob Gronkowski. He has a cameo as well in here, which he can't act at all, but he has a little cameo in here. And there's just like little bits in there where it's kind of funny and just like a little bit here and there, but it's just not enough. It's not enough entertainment for me. I was kind of bored at points in this film, and it's felt like more of the same, but just too late at this point. So 1 out of 5 is all I can give this film. The fifth film that I saw is Satanic Hispanics. I watched this on November the 18th. This is a horror anthology, and it stars Efron Ramirez, who also plays Pedro in Napoleon Dynamite. He is called the Watcher, and he is found in El Paso after what seems to be a cartel confrontation, and he's brought in for police questioning. Now, there's a couple directors in this film where they share these different anthologies. So there's 4 other stories. The first director is the director Damian Rugna. He did When Evil Lurks, and also Eduardo Sanchez. He did the Blair Witch Project. I don't know any of the other directors or what they've actually done in the past, but those 2 are the notable ones here. And you have Efron Ramirez here, who is telling these stories to just kind of wrap everything or tie everything together kind of loosely. The first of all the shorts is Tambien Lovi. Now, this was directed by When Evil Lurks director. This film, it really just goes into this guy named Gustavo, and he is just seeing all these different things, different kind of horrors. He's having a rough time. His sister is very concerned for him, and he's seeing all these different horrors, and I think that this one is probably the strongest out of the 4. The tone of all 4 of these different stories is just all over the place because they range from horror to just more so comedy, and I think this one is probably the scariest out of them all. I think the effects here are pretty good. I think it's pretty spooky, and it does have a little bit of things that he did in When Evil Lurks, I think, with some of like the makeup and such like that, and I do think that it does build atmosphere, and I think this one is definitely the best out of all the bunch. The next story is El Vampiro. Now, this was directed by Eduardo Sanchez, who was a co-director in the Blair Witch Project, and this really focuses on this older man who is a vampire. He forgets that it's going to be broad daylight soon, and he's going to die if he doesn't get home. His wife is very concerned for him, and she's a vampire as well, and she tries to decide if she should risk her life to go out and save her husband. Now, this one is very goofy. There's a lot of like random gags and silliness. The cops that are actually in this segment are absolutely really stupid, and they can't tell what real gore is from a real person's head that's actually been ripped off. They try to do some silly, funny little gags here and there, and it's just too much comedy for me, and it's just not my kind of story. Obviously, a huge tonal shift from the first story, and honestly, this one was just not that great. The next story is Nahuls, and this stars a CIA informant who basically is trapped with these indigenous people. Now, this has a little bit of spookiness to it. it has that folktale lore towards it, and it definitely feels like it's trying to go into like maybe like a Green Inferno kind of route. And the problem with this one is it's just so short, it's kind of confusing, especially within its tonal shifts. And because it is very short and it gets interrupted by the cops when they're talking, it doesn't really get wrapped up. It just kind of leaves you there hanging, and it just, it's trying to go into like the spooky, weird kind of route, but it's also kind of confusing as well. So this one, it had potential, but it fell flat, unfortunately. The final story is The Hammer of Zanzibar. Now, this story is about a man named Malcolm. Him and his friends are marked for dead after they recorded a sacred ceremony in Cuba on a trip that they took. And there is a point in this film where he is trying to rescue one of the possessed people, and that possessed person is his ex-girlfriend. And so he has to fight this evil spirit with the Hammer of Zanzibar. And if you're wondering, what is the Hammer of Zanzibar? Well, it's a wooden dildo that he has to face her with. This whole short story, it definitely started off pretty strong. And then when it gets to that part, it starts to feel really stupid. The comedy just doesn't work for me. It definitely feels kind of uncomfortable, and definitely uncomfortable for some people. And again, like the tonal shifts, like all these different short stories, the tonal shift, especially from the first story to this last one, I mean, it's just way different, and it really goes off the rails. And I don't think this is a story that what we're wrapping up with, it's too much of a mixed bag for me, and I really didn't like this story that much. Now, the last story of the Watcher, who is sitting there telling all these stories to really wrap up this whole anthology. Now he has to face this demon. It's called the San La Muerta. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I don't take Spanish, so I have no clue. I don't even know if that's like a real demon or what. But anyway, he has to face that demon in the police station. And of course, the police station, they have all these weapons for him. And we're treated to a slow motion showdown of him actually trying to defeat this demon. And that's really just the whole plot and anthology just all meshed together. It doesn't really make a lot of sense at times, but it is great for these directors to actually showcase some short stories and just kind of show you what they really have. But it's just kind of a match of just stories and really no like constant tone, because they're all different tones. And I would say that if you really like comedy, I think that you may like this a little bit more than I did. If you're looking for like scary kind of stories, really the only one, like the first one, is probably like the scariest or spookiest kind of, horror tone that you're looking for. But other than that, I just don't think from a horror anthology aspect that this was really that great. I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5 because I do think there are elements here that I really liked, and just, some spooky little aspects and little things that I can pick out of each story that I did like. But just some of the comedy aspects and just, the crazy tonal shifts of really just a mismatch of stories that don't really line up to like a final conclusion. Yeah, this is just an okay thing, like little anthology to watch, and I definitely wouldn't watch it again. But I'm glad that I at least checked it out, and just, I'm trying to get a little bit more into horror anthologies because it's one thing that I really haven't really touched upon. I've only watched like a few, I would say. And this one I wanted to give a chance, especially for smaller directors. So this one, it was okay, but I wouldn't say that I would watch it again. But those are all the movies that I've watched recently. I will have 2 other follow-up videos for some of the other stuff that I've been watching as well. I appreciate if you've watched the whole video this far, and I appreciate that you guys have checked this out. If you've watched any of these or you're interested in any of these, let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on my next review.